I would like you all to imagine you are a tree. You're in a forest, the birds are chirping quietly, the wind is blowing through your branches. Never mind, we're not going to do that. This is not that type of homily, not a meditation today. But what I would like to talk about is the prophet Ezekiel, who talks about the cedars in ancient Israel. I'm going to read a little bit of it again just because it's darn good poetry. God is speaking through the prophet Ezekiel, and he says, I too will take from the crest of the cedar, from its topmost branches tear off a tender shoot, and plant it on a high and lofty mountain. And all the trees of the field shall know that I, the Lord, lift high the lowly tree. So if you imagine ancient Israel, ancient Palestine, I was very blessed. My classmates and I got to go to the Holy Land for 10 weeks during seminary. And it's not really sandy, but it is a little rocky, little vegetation, little shrubbery, just flat plains and little hills. And then all of a sudden in the middle of the horizon is a giant cedar. These are the kind of cedars that the prophet Ezekiel is talking about, and that the listeners of that time would know and envision this in their minds. So what God is saying to Israel, to his people, to all of us, is that we are all cedar trees. And what God says he's going to do is take off the top crown of that cedar and plant it on an even higher mountain so that it can continue to grow up and put out forth branches and bear fruit. Since this is what God is saying that he will do, we need to ask ourselves, what do we do when God asks us to put forth branches? What do we do when he asks us to bear fruit? And what do we do when he takes our crown and puts it and glorifies it on a high mountain? I think we can reflect on this, it being Father's Day, to the fathers and grandfathers in this room. Whether it be your firstborn child or whether you have 30 great-grandchildren, God is taking something from you, not forcibly, not to take something and make you less, but by your very act of having children, by your very act of leading a family, you are sacrificing much. You are giving up a lot. And that is a form of putting forth your own branches. That is a form of bearing fruit, and that is a form of God taking your crown, your children, and putting them on a high mountain so that they can achieve even more, so that they can grow up higher towards the sky, and they can be a home for many birds for generations to come. How do we do this? How can we allow God to do this for us and to us? The words of St. Paul, he tells us, we are courageous always. The courage that St. Paul talks about is the courage in which we can respond to God when he asks of us for the crown of our cedar so that he can make something that is glorious even more glorious. Courage, the translation that's used in St. Paul, talks about cheerful confidence. Cheerful confidence. That's another way to translate courage. And that's how we can respond when God asks for our branches, for our fruit, and for our cedar crowns. We can respond in joyful confidence, cheerful courage, that we know that even though we are losing a little bit and sacrificing, we know that God will bring glory of it. All the trees of the field will know that I, the Lord, bring low the high tree and lift high the lowly tree. The lowliest tree of all, we know, is Jesus. He's the one who had not just his crown taken, but all of him taken. He was the lowliest tree, and yet he was the most exalted tree. So as we go forward in this 11th week of Ordinary Time, let us focus on how we can be cedar trees, how we can put forth our branches, bear fruit, and allow God to take us, which seems like an inconvenience or a hurt to us, but really the goal is to end up glorifying his name, glorifying his people, and glorifying all those who will come after us. Amen.